meeting part 2. And also now with food, it looks like we just like stopped the meeting to go get food, and that's not what happened.
We even get Chick-fil-A for the record of this recorded meeting. We did not.
Not what happened.
Just a lucky side effect of over ordering.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for now. Our meeting is like just going over time. So if you actually do need this time baback, like take it and then we can. Okay.
I have to grade some quizzes, but that shouldn't take me that long.
Great. Because I realized I was like 12 to 1, and now we're just going beyond that. Okay. So, jumping back in, so thinking about the specific standards. And so you identified your 2 power claims and then their level of proficiency. So students analyze how a writer uses literary elements to develop a theme in somewhat challenging short fiction. And then students write clear claims about the relationship of a short work of fiction's features and overall meaning and select relevant quotes as evidence. So 42.6 and 44.1% proficiency. And so so you identified those priority standards. One thing that I didn't see is how to close the gap for those.
Yeah.
And so first, when you're looking at both of them, how are you thinking about closing the gap? Just specifically in terms of, do they need to be full-blown reteachers or do they need to be spiraled?
Spiraled.
Okay.
Yes. They need to be spiraled. Because, like, so many of these, not spittled, spiraled. That's also not how you say spiral. I'm so sorry. Yeah, they both need to be spiraled. Claims is something that we always have to hit super heavy, you know this. I mean, throughout high school, but especially in 9th grade. Their claims are so vague, and then other things fall apart. But also, they seem to really struggle coming into high school with any comprehension of what figurative language is. So they can do like simile and metaphor and imagery. They love imagery. But accurately identifying them is a skill gap, but also just like remembering what they are is a massive skill gap. And so the analysis of them is being spiraled as well as revisiting what each of them are.
Okay.
And so I looked at, when I was building this quarter's aim sequence and the quizzes that we needed in there, I was looking at the types of questions that are on CIA 2 of the elements that they need to identify and discuss. And so that's why our quizzes are focused on point of view, tone, and structure.
Okay.
Because those are the things that are going to pop up a lot throughout this quarter and at the end in their tests. And so those are the things we're re-highlighting, and then as we do practice writes and things like that, like I know you left a comment on a quiz, and I did make the adjustment of like adding the specifics to make it look like the prompt more. And so with things like that, we've been going back and like, okay, I'm asking you to write about tone. We're talking about tone. What is tone? And like we have a tone quiz, obviously, so we'll be talking about it, but things like personification, we had to go back and redefine together, because it's not something that they're used to discussing.
Yep.
Because I think in middle school, I don't know if they just didn't do it a lot or if it just didn't stick. It's always hard to tell.
Sure.
But that level of analysis has struggled because of the lack of language around it. And so we're just consistently spiraling back in what those elements are, what the difference is between literary and stylistic ones, the fact that they both matter to develop meaning, and just I'm giving them a lot more writing practice this quarter as well. In our, like you can see it in the aim sequence, I put it on our quizzes for the first time. That's why they're taking me a while to grade. Because I also want them to have meaningful and functional feedback.
Yeah.
And so like claims is something I'm specifically hitting. Like, is your claim specific? Is your claim defensible? And we're doing a lot more of the like, we have 5 free minutes in this lesson plan, great, let's craft claims together. Because nothing else can function when they write if their claims don't.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I did have a sort of a related question to these power claims. So the proficiency on these power claims is higher than the proficiency percentages overall. Why do you think that like they're higher on these two? Because like that's good, like because you know the proficiency overall that you identified was what 23%, and then these it says 42.6 and 44.1.
Yes.
Is that average or is that proficiency percentage?
I can tell you in a second if Jess sent out the guest Wi-Fi password.
Okay.
Because all the Wi-Fi just broke on my computer.
Oh right, because you are.
Yep.
I don't have it. It's
She
like
said, she said she was sending it out.
oh, no, yeah, I know, but like it's doing that thing where it's like, do you want to
Oh.
share it with you? And I'm like, but I don't have like I haven't
Is
changed.
your phone connected though?
Let me share. I don't. It says it was successful, but no, it's also not connected. So to the Wi-Fi.
Okay.
So like I just shared with you the old password. So just so you like it's not a.
Cool. So, I know on the internet, but
What were you gonna look?
I was gonna pull up the Illuminate report again because mine logged out.
Yeah.
Oh! Do I have internet? It's trying. But in the Illuminate report, it has the like
Yeah.
the bars, you know,
Yeah.
and that's for the full power claim. And so I know that part of the thing is that like there's claim questions within the multiple choice.
Mm-hmm.
So even if they didn't get to the claim power standard within their essay, they got to the claim power standard within their multiple choice, or some kids only got a claim within their essays and then ran out of time, so they only had one sentence and I could score them on a claim, but I can't score them on something else, right? Like the evidence and the analysis. And so some kids got like higher writing scores because they had a defensible claim, but lower everything else. Also, I think vocab was a super skewed negative thing. It always is. So, our power claims. You can do it. So, where is it? Here. Where did what is the? I know I got this from somewhere. Is that something? So this is 1.3a, but I'm so confused because this has a very different number.
Mm-hmm.
Did I pull it from up here? I think I pulled it from up here. And this was the 42.4 and the 46.6. No. I am so confused right now.
So then, what is the proficiency percentage for those power claims?
I'm so confused. I still where I got these numbers. Okay, so students analyze how a writer uses literary elements to develop a theme. It's somewhat challenging short fiction is our first power claim. It's 1.3a. So cool. And then our other one is 2.3c. So I'm really confused and I need to look back and see where I got these numbers from and figure out if I averaged out the questions for percent correct or what. Because if I look at it here and I'm looking at this, this is power claim 1 and this is power claim 2. And so I'm trying to figure out what thing I pulled that from that has such a different thing. And I feel like it must have been somewhere up here. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because I know I didn't pull those numbers out of thin air. But now I'm so confused.
Yeah. So, because I think that's so then let's actually take a look then at these questions.
Yeah.
Because you've got them identified below.
Mm-hmm.
And so looking then at these specific questions. So like if we start off with, we can look at question number 2, and I'll pull it up on my computer.
But I can pull up the percentages of things up here. My DDP is loaded.
So then, because I want us to get even more specific about like what is it that students are missing on these questions and where are they actually performing. Because one thing that did jump out to me is those numbers were higher than like the proficiency overall, and so I was like, well, I mean, they're crushing like the things
The
that we're
two
trying to
power
focus on,
points.
which is that's great. And then it's like, well, then what are we missing, and do we need to actually focus our spiral review on those other things if we're
Right.
overperforming on those components? And so,
Okay, so I think I averaged things from the questions down there. And
But but does that give you an accurate?
I don't. Not if it's showing one kid actually mastered the standard
Yeah.
here, then no.
Yeah.
So I think I just did a dumb thing and like pulled data from a bad place.
Okay.
That's less accurate than it should have been.
Okay. Yeah. I was okay.
I
Right.
think that's the problem with that.
Cool. So then. So then, zooming in on those specific questions. So question 2 is the first one that was identified, or is the lowest mastered question.
Yep.
With only 24.6% of students having demonstrated mastery. So, question 2: the speaker's tone toward going to gate A4 in line 5 can be best described as
Mm-hmm.
blank. The most common response here. So a lot of students were saying D
Okay. Which was interested.
versus the correct
Reluctant,
answer,
which
being
is
reluctant.
very far off.
Mm-hmm. So what do we think? So like I know that you had talked about that, you know, we're spiraling tone already, that's a
Mhm.
plan, POV tone, and I don't remember
Structure.
the structure. What do you think is accounting for this gap right here?
Twofold. Well, threefold. One, students struggle with tone.
Yeah.
Generally.
Sure.
Right? 2,
Mhm.
they did not know what reluctant meant. And 3, they did not know what a gate was.
Okay.
And so, like, I had a lot of kids talking to me after the multiple choice portion of the test. And they were like, this keeps saying gate. What is a gate? Like, wait, I don't even understand. And, like, couldn't contextualize what it meant to be going to a gate.
Okay.
And so, like, I don't think they understood what this narrator was actually, the speaker was actually doing,
Mm-hmm.
and what their idea was about a gate and like the airport in general.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot of them haven't flown before.
Sure.
And so like I know that kids asked me a lot about what reluctant meant and asked me a lot about what a gate was. And both of those things are not a test. And so there's that, but also like tone is just generally a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're so consistently associating tone with tone of voice.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the work that we're doing next week as we work on tone consistently is taking away the idea of tone of voice
Mm-hmm.
and pushing really heavily on what literary tone is versus conversational tone,
Mm-hmm.
because that's a large gap for them. Is they're like, well, how would I know the tone of voice? I can't hear them.
Mm-hmm.
And so they learned a lot. They do mood a lot in middle school. And so like the first day that we push tone next week, it's a lot of pushing like, okay, this is what tone is in a text. This is the difference between mood and tone. Here's how tone creates mood.
Mm-hmm.
You've analyzed mood. Now we're looking at what created it. That's our tone. And so like that very explicit instruction and reminder, I think will support kids, but also we did less work with tone in quarter one and more work with characterization.
Okay. I added some notes here. There are some things that I want us to keep in mind, even as we're gonna only look at a couple more questions and see what are some overarching trends, if anything that you just identified for that question is similar to the gaps that you're seeing for those other questions as well. And so the second most missed question here was 17. 31% of students mastered it. Or got it correct, excuse me. Well, I guess it's mastering. They got it correct, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean. Okay.
Yep, and it's another tone question.
Yep. And then, so the most frequent answer was C, and the correct answer was A.
And so if they're pushing, that's 17.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like, if I'm looking at the assessment map,
Mm-hmm.
it says what I very much know to be true from like talking to students about the test.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if kids picked C, they just didn't comprehend the passage. And so like the narrator poses a question,
Mm-hmm.
and so they put questioning. And kids struggled so much with what was happening in this passage,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't really surprise me.
Okay.
Cause like, what was their percentage, just like out of curiosity, on 13?
37% is literally the next question you're about to look
is
at.
the other tone question. Cool.
Yeah.
So tone.
Yeah. So, and that to me, so with like noticing that their three most missed questions were all tone questions, that to me does seem more of like it should be a higher priority, which indicates reteach versus spiral. And so you've identified at the table below, which is dope, like the days that you're gonna address tone.
And this is all next week.
Yeah. And so like when you're saying it's spiraled versus reteach, what do these days specifically look like?
Yeah. So we have lesson plans for next week.
Right. Well, yeah.
I know you haven't looked at them yet.
Yeah.
I was about to pull them up and I remembered I don't have the internet.
Yep. Okay. Great.
But-
Yeah. No, we got. Look. See, we have tech.
But luckily, this is genuinely next week's focus, and so we can actually just look at the lesson plans for next week and see what that looks like.
Cool. Yeah. I think then that's how we can spend the rest of our time right now. Is just like let's just delve into that, and I will actually just let you like. This is your planning folder, so I'll let you like navigate. Well, I was giving you the mouse because I don't believe in the keypad because the keypad and I are
I was
not.
wondering why you were sliding your notebook over to me, and that makes a lot more sense that
It's
there's a
'cause
mouse on it.
I
but
don't.
I didn't notice.
No. I cannot with the keypad thing. Okay, great. So
This is good though, because I had tagged you in a question about one of the things this week anyway. Next week. So as we're looking at tone, focusing a lot on tone shifts because that's a lot of the places that they have to analyze more.
Yeah.
And so then we get the practice of tone exists, and tone shifts. And so they're not just identifying tone, they're analyzing. So we gonna watch that analog chord next Tuesday, right?
Hello, y'all. The analog we made, I haven't watched it yet.
Maybe we misheard. I don't know.
I don't know.
Richardson seems very cool. She seems very chill. Like nothing was
Maybe
happening.
he said switch.
Maybe. I have no. It's great because I was like,
No, I also heard that. Okay. Cool. So, yeah, because then it's not just can you identify a tone, but can you analyze the impact of tone? Can you analyze the way it affects meaning, which is what the power claim is actually hitting?
Yeah.
Is the way that these tones interact to create meaning.
mm-hmm.
And so we're looking at, yes, tone, but what is the tone before Charles? What is the tone when Charles arrives? And what is the actual shift in the exit ticket?
Yeah, and question 17 was a shift in tone question as well, right? Like it
Mhm.
was, okay, so like, have you put any of this back in front of kids yet?
No. So that was one of the things that I was saying, like, while I was doing my DDP.
Yeah.
After I planned everything, I was looking at the questions. I was like, I think I fucked up with the way that I planned to do things. Because
Mhm.
I didn't plan a major reteach until the middle of the unit.
Mm-hmm.
So that we could look at data from the CIA and the MOU
Mm-hmm.
and do some like comparative discussion and see like where we were the most, where we had grown and where we had still struggled.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that is a mistake, looking at like the way that we structured stuff in the DDP.
Yeah. So yeah. No, and I think like you said, you said CIA 2, tone, POV, and structure are the two, like the
And
three
then
biggest
still
things.
characterization, which we consistently work towards.
Right. So like I think definitely going all in on tone, since that's where they struggled the most, is right. And so
Mhm.
like, and you're hitting it here. So like, I mean, you identified these as spiral, but you've got whole lessons dedicated to, so like, which I think is what you were saying earlier. So I think like this is in essence a reteach because
Maybe
you
I
are.
just called it the wrong.
Yes, but I think my question is, did you have in quarter one, how many of your lessons were the objective was based in tone?
Can you pull up the Q1 sequence? I hate that I don't have my computer connected to the internet. I need to fix it. One.
Okay. Great. Well, not great, but
No, but that's why.
yeah. So like we didn't hit it at all, really, in quarter one. So with that, so with that then, like, how, so when we're thinking about reteach, so obviously like it wasn't, one lesson is not like enough to really determine how quote unquote sticky the lesson itself was, because there weren't enough times for students to really like build onto that foundation. But thinking about, you know, the data that we're seeing in this from the CIA 1, what are like the things that you really want to make sure as you're hitting tone again? What are the things that you want to make sure you're spiraling in and that you're going all in on based on what you saw in that first CIA?
Yeah. So I think part of it is going to be that tone shift.
Yep.
Since I think so one of the two of them. What is 13?
13 was not a tone shift.
Not a tone shift. So
No.
17 is tone shift, but 13 and 2 were just tone identification.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
It was- Well,
based on-
13, yeah. So
point of
based on the
view.
details and tone.
And tone and point of view, they're two things that we're
Yep.
hitting hard. This is our point of view quiz, which I'm grading, and we're going to see how they go.
Great.
Preliminarily, they did well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're going to see. But, so the tone IDs is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like the nice thing about tone shift is that
Mhm.
they have to identify two different tones to identify a shift.
Right.
And so I think that like working on clear and evidence-based identifications of tone is going to be really important. A lot of those questions was like, what is the tone of this section?
Yeah.
the tone shifts from what to what, and so it's really hitting home on like the actual identification piece
Mm-hmm.
much more than the analysis piece.
Yeah.
And so when I'm adding in like the monitoring laps and stuff, when I build the PowerPoints,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that the thing that I'm hitting the hardest and the heaviest, and maybe structuring handouts to be like, before I even look at anything else, before you look at anything else,
Mm-hmm.
identify the tone. And it might mean, like, the way I usually structure these is find the tone, prove it with evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Because some kids' brains are doing I go from evidence first and then I identify a tone, and some kids' brains are, I know what the tone is, now I have to prove it.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if I give them a small section
Mm-hmm.
in these rounds, if I give them a small section of text and have them answer a multiple choice question of like, what is the tone?
Mm-hmm.
And then we still get the practice of like proving it, discussing it,
Yes.
but the actual at-bats that they're getting in class are multiple choice in the language of the stems from the CIAs,
Mm-hmm.
identify the tone of this section, and then they do still at some point prove it with evidence, but that is a different like round
Yes.
than the original tone identification work that they're doing in the format of the CIA.
Yes. So I think that that's right.
Okay.
And so I want to actually then start making that change in here.
Okay.
So what section do you want to pull out? Or I'm going to give you a little bit of time. Like, what is the section you want them to zoom in on?
Mm-hmm.
What's the tone? And then as you're thinking, as you're planning this out, I also want you to think about, you identified earlier vocab as an issue.
Yeah.
And so like think about, in doing this and in crafting your laps, what are ways that you can push for more sophisticated vocab, or like what are ways that you can embed that a little bit more? And so like just something to keep in mind as you're planning this. But I'm gonna give you some time to go ahead and go through that and identify what is the section you're zooming in on, what are the things you want them to pull out, and then we'll go from there.
So I know for the first part of this, the before Charles arrived,
Mm-hmm.
I want them looking at chapter 3, and so I can give them, where did it go that I was pulling evidence from, because I turned to the page numbers from my PDF, because it's different. I always have to retroactively go back and do it. But there is, I think it's at the beginning. So these moments of like all of the like positivity of like, I sat around and had apricot jam on my toast. You know, I get to dream over these things. And these moments of like they're sitting in their house enjoying their time in this safe space with each other. There's a lot of moments where like Mary Cat says her off the cuff stuff about wanting to be a werewolf or live on the moon. And it's just like, silly Mary Cat, will you make me a dandelion pie? But rhubarb is prettier. And it's all the just like very wholesome, calming, like loving conversations between the sisters, which is towards the beginning of chapter 3, which is why we're working like backwards in that moment.
So then what is the specific section of that text then you would want students to read?
So, where's that? There we go. Here. So I want them to read from here to here. So from everything's safe on the moon down to began to sing and wash the dishes.
Before they go into this,
Mm-hmm.
so you have them in the do now, or like this lead up, like what is the difference between mood and tone?
Mm-hmm.
But like they clearly demonstrated a lack of mastery on tone. So how do I as a student know how to track or define tone here.
So I wonder if we adjust this,
Mm-hmm.
because I've been doing these as homework ones, but I think if I've made the mistake so far that I have of not putting their CIA data back in front of them until later in the quarter,
Yeah.
then we can take these 3 CIA questions, or
Mhm.
like 1 or 2 of them,
Yeah.
probably 2 of them, and put back in front of them, like, this is the small section of text that this pulled from.
Mm-hmm.
This was the question. We answered X. The answer was Z. What is the difference between these responses?
Mm-hmm.
Where does the evidence for the correct answer exist within this text?
Mm-hmm.
And like having them go back and do that misconception instead of a comprehension-based one from homework.
Mm-hmm. So, yes, when you're thinking about how to teach students or teaching students how to identify tone, what are the steps that you teach them? Because I think that, like, yes, the evidence is really crucial, like, because that's that support, that's that justification component, and that allows them to, like, to analyze. But what is the actual, like, how are we wanting students to, like, identify tone?
I think looking for patterns
Okay.
in heavily connotated words
Mm-hmm.
is one of the first like steps to that.
Okay.
And then using those patterns to build characters' emotion, right?
Okay.
Because as we look at tone, it's coming from like our narrator, our character, or our author has this specific emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that they did well, because a lot of them chose to talk about tone in this,
Mm-hmm.
when they were discussing point of view, because they go so hand in hand, is identify like all of the actual like connotative words that pulled out the depression that the character was feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And so like those patterns are the strength in starting to identify tone.
Yeah.
I think that there are ways in which we can connect it to like the work they do with characterization
Mm-hmm.
of like what are they thinking? What are they saying? How are they affecting people? Like those are all the things that they pull out for characterization. But I'm wondering because like I haven't done as much explicit teaching of how to find tone as I think that this is demonstrating that they need.
Yes, and I 100% agree. And so I actually think that I think that the opportunity or what students need is even before we get to like the analyzing the shift in tone, they need to be able to just identify, like there's like, it is that like that foundational step of identifying tone, because I think, you know, even when you look at the questions that they missed, so you start on question 2, and it's just what is the tone, like the
Yeah.
baseline, and this was their most missed question. And
Yeah.
like I think you're right, like vocab is definitely like a really key
a
part
piece
of that, but
But if they had gotten to, but like, interested is the most incorrect answer.
yeah, like
Right.
and the thing is they don't know what reluctant means, sure, like fine, but they know what frustrated, confused, and interested mean.
Right, and this is the most incorrect
Right.
answer, so it's not only
Yes.
they don't know what reluctant means,
Correct.
it's also they are missing the positive versus the negative here.
Yeah. And so I think it's like identifying that,
Mhm.
like how do you identify tone? Step 1. And then when you get to question 13, which was their third most missed question, there it is. Okay. So then this is again it kind of and it levels up about like based on the details and tone, and then like using those to elucidate point of view, which like you've already done assessment, so I'm excited to see what that is.
Yeah.
And then through that you're able to identify like the shift, and like mind you, like granted all the shift is like being able to identify tone in 2 different places, and so
Right.
like really it's just that application twice and then be like this is different from this.
And that it's more of a cause and effect than it is a tone when they actually build the analysis of shift.
Right. I think it's like, I think part of the reteach is like going hard on how to identify tone, full stop.
And so maybe when I go back and adjust this plan, as we do our working backwards, maybe I model
Yes.
tone identification. Is Kate still standing out there?
No,
Kate.
that was Bonham.
Kate just told me she's waiting outside.
Oh, I now see Kate.
She's like, I'm hovering.
For you?
Yeah.
Great.
Well,
Well, not great, but like, I always prefer it when it's not me.
Yeah, no, it's for me. But
Not her specifically, just anyone. I just also want to make that clear.
But so turning this into a model with clarified and concrete thinking steps,
Yeah.
so that then here they can independently replicate the
Yes.
thinking steps that we modeled here.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll go over the misconceptions
Yep.
from the CIA,
Uh-huh.
and then we talk about here's how we actually identify tone, we model, and then independent at bat, and then between A and B, they can get to C.
So then because I know you teach 6th, right?
Yep.
Right, okay. So then I want us to take just the next couple minutes. I want
have
you,
to meet with Kate in 5 minutes.
cool, great. Take the next 3 minutes. And I want you to just like write down the thinking steps that you want to model.
Okay, so thinking steps. We're looking at finding
I can't believe you scheduled a meeting when we're meeting, you know, an
We're
hour.
supposed to be done 9 minutes ago. Okay, so I want finding patterns, identifying character, actions, thoughts, words, and synthesis into. Obviously, these are not the clearest examples. I need to concretize them.
Sure, yeah.
Synthesis into emotion of character. So let me clarify this. So finding patterns of heavily connotated words, focus on emotion. And then identifying character, action, thoughts, words, and then synthesizing those into the emotions of the character.
So when you're thinking about this step, what do you need to do before you find a pattern? Because I think that there's a step before this. So patterns come when you've noticed like the initial, like noticing, like you have to notice the words first, right?
Right.
So it's like,
So identify heavily connotated emotion words, then find the
Yes.
pattern.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yep, that makes sense. ID heavily connotated emotion words.
yeah, I think,
Find
I-
pattern.
yes, I think a trend that's starting to pop up a little bit here, or that like I'm starting, I think, to notice is your rightfully so, because I think we always say this, like you're going for that more rigorous, like we're trying to do this analysis, we're trying to do this, but we also want to make sure that students can do that, like that low blooms, like we're identifying first, like in order
So if
for us
we can't
to
identify, we can't.
right, so like making sure that we're including that first step before we can. Cool. When will you be able to have this lesson updated?
I can probably update it tonight.
Tonight? Okay. Cool.
So I have a feeling I'm gonna have a lot of parents tomorrow after I email you.
So you and I will. So what we'll do is you and I can let me know when you get this done, and so what I'll do is I'll review it, and then on Monday, I'll schedule an observation, and then that way like we can see this for this specific model and like the application of this.
Cool.
Great. Cool. That was such a disjointed meeting. I'm
Yep.
so sorry.
It's not your fault.
It
is what it is.
Great.
But we got the thing.
We did the thing. I'm excited. I'm excited for us to go all in on tone. I'm excited for us to get kids to identify it and then get kids to analyze it.
And then because we obviously didn't have time, I'm gonna email you the gap and then the action step
Yeah.
that I want for Belton.
Yeah.
And then if you can tell me if it is clear enough.
Yes. Yeah. Do that and then perfect. 2 quick questions as you're walking out.
Yes.
And I don't have meetings, I think, for the rest of the day, so I'm good I can respond, whenever. So whenever you get that to me, I should be able to respond pretty quickly. Follow-up questions, did you complete TMTP yet?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Do you know if Dalton has?
No, but I should check.
Great. Check. Perfect. Thank you. Let me know if you need anything.
Yep.
Thank you again for this short meeting.